Have we been properly protected against the bad food?
The flu of 1918 killed more people than any other epidemic. If the poultry industry does not reduce its intensive confinement on factory farms, bird flu may write another deadly chapter in human history.
The unhygienic, stressful conditions inside these chicken factories, so crowded that the healthy can't escape the disease, may allow the virus to mutate into a more dangerous form.
The potential for bird flu to spread is so serious that even the United Nations is urging action.
The United Nations has called on all governments to fight the role of what they call factory farming. How we treat animals can have global public health implications.
With hog farms fattening millions of pigs for slaughter, grain goes in and waste comes out. This waste finds its way into our oceans and water supply systems, contaminating the animals that live in it, as well as those who eat from it.
In 2008, Delmarva Peninsula Poultry Farms raised more than 570 million chickens, and all those chickens produced massive mountains of manure, 1.5 billion pounds a year. That's more manure than the annual human waste from 4 big cities, New York, Washington, San Francisco, and Atlanta, all put together.
It's too much manure and arguably too many animals under the current structure. Now, there's
You mean too many animals in one place?
Exactly.
It's a problem all over the country. Hog farms in the Carolinas and Iowa, poultry farms in Arkansas and Texas, cattle farms in Wisconsin and along the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania.
In terms of just damage to the ecosystems, you know, the destruction of entire ecosystems, of aquatic communities, of fish going extinct, there's nothing as bad as these factory farm operations, nothing.
All of the livestock in America produce about 130 times as much waste as the human population of America. Where do you think all that goes? It goes into our land, it goes into our rivers, it goes into the air.
If we want to know where the things we buy come from, we can find out. You know, if I wanted to know where my glass of grape juice comes from, I could probably get myself an invitation to the orchard. If you became very curious about Mariah's fragrance, she would probably tell us the ingredients and let us see the place where it's manufactured, as she should, because she's proud of it. But meat is this incredible exception. I would challenge you, I would challenge anybody here today to go to the kind of farm that produces the meat that is served in restaurants and sold in supermarkets. And what does that mean if we can't find out? What does it mean that there's an entire industry set up asking for our money, asking us to put their products in our mouths, asking for us to feed it to our children? They will not let us see how it's produced.
You wrote letters, you tried to go, and there was no response?
I did everything I could. I must have sent dozens of letters, and I explained where I was coming from. A lot of these companies, Tyson in particular, talks about having a family-centered philosophy. And so I appealed to that in my letter. I said, family-centered. I'm a new father. I want to know what I'm feeding my kid. Would it be a problem to visit any of your farms? I'll make myself available anytime you're ready for me. I'd love to talk to farmers. I'd love to hear all the stories that you can make available, and I never heard any response, and they weren't exceptional. I mean,
each year, 5,000 Americans die from foodborne illnesses, and scores of those are from E. coli, which often comes from beef that's been contaminated by cow manure.
They're walking around in manure.
U.S. government beef inspector Trent Burhow says the lack of safety and health standards in slaughterhouses would shock consumers.
A warning from local health officials about an E. coli outbreak. The health department says several people are on the sick list, and they're trying to prevent that list from growing.
She was left paralyzed after unknowingly eating an E. coli-tainted ground meat patty.
Fears of unsafe U.S. meat sparked protests in South Korea after President Lee Myung-bak rescinded a 5-year ban on American beef imports in April.
Someone says they used to be a vegetarian, they weren't getting enough protein and iron. Doctor said, I have to go back to eating meat. What do you say to that?
You have to get a new doctor. I mean, the American Dietetic Association, which is the gold standard for nutrition in our country, says exactly the opposite. They say not only do you not have to seek out more protein, but that vegetarians have a more optimal protein intake than meat eaters. So this is a lie. It's been sold to you, and you should resist it.
All right.
So
Yes, we have to worry about what we eat. We have to worry about the environment. You know, there's so many chemicals in the air. There's so many pesticides that are used on our food. I think all of us know there is a link between those things and cancer. It's been an established link in many ways.
If you could, for those of us that don't spend 20 hours a day analyzing medical journals, reduce this to a very simple formula as to what the correlation was between animal fat intake and breast cancer.
Well, Paula, very simply, the message is that we are learning more and more about how diet influences the risk of cancer. And this is one more bit of evidence that says if you eat a lot of red meat or a lot of animal fat, you are at increased risk of getting cancer.
Individuals come and they have advanced illness. One of the first things you want to do is remove animal flesh from their system and dairy products because it puts an extra burden and the body's not able to digest it. Minimally processed, whole food, plant-based.
And those cows pass a lot of gas, which may sound funny, but the methane they release is 23 times more harmful than carbon dioxide.
Recent studies say eating a plants-only diet produces far fewer greenhouse gases than an animal-based diet, shrinking one's so-called carbon footprint.
About climate change, we tend to think of cars and airplanes and what have you, and agriculture's contribution to greenhouse gas emissions has been almost overlooked. But in fact, globally, agriculture contributes 30% of our greenhouse gas emissions, and meat, 18%. That's more than all transport put together.
Eshel says eliminating meat is better for the environment than switching from a Toyota Camry to a hybrid Prius.
We know that the average meat eater uses about 4,000 gallons of water a day, and the average vegetarian about 300. So over a year, I guess you probably use about 1.5 million gallons of water, and I probably use about maybe 10,000 or something, 100,000.
Sure. What I would say is Thanksgiving is a great holiday. I mean, most people in here, probably everybody celebrates Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving. Why do I like it? Because I like celebrating with my family, and I like what we're celebrating. I like being grateful. I like being thankful. It feels good. And the more I learned about the centerpiece that's on the table, the less good I felt about it. It is not a symbol of gratefulness. It is not a symbol of thankfulness.
I mean, we're taking this stuff into us. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, all of this, is contained within us, and certainly it has an effect.
And like me, you just said, I mean, I struggled with it. I was a vegetarian, and I used to eat cheeseburgers all the time and steak and everything. I mean, I loved cheeseburgers and couldn't imagine never eating them again. And then I actually did some research myself and did the same thing.
Brooklyn's Chef Mateo is a vegan chef, meaning no dairy, meat, or any animal products. But this food is anything but earthy crunchy, like cashew cheese ravioli. The pasta is made from thinly sliced turnips. It has a cheese flavor, but it's actually made from ground nuts. Yes. It's so good.
People are having hard times, you know, feeding their family. So if you can go get a burger for $1, if you can feed your kids, and if it's affordable and if it's, you know, readily available, they'll say that it may not be possible. They can't afford to eat another way.
You can't afford to eat this way. I mean, the only defense for factory farming is that they're making cheap food for the masses. And in fact, they're making the most expensive food that's ever been made in human history. So you go to the cash register and you pay a certain price, but all the costs are externalized. So, you know, factory farming is the #1 cause of global warming. It's at least 40% more destructive than all transportation combined. So we obsess about, do I buy a Hummer, do I buy a Prius? It doesn't matter. Relatively speaking, it doesn't matter as compared to what you eat. It's the #1 cause of air pollution. It's the #1 cause of water pollution. It's the #1 cause for loss of biodiversity. It's making all of our drugs less effective, antibiotics less effective. It created swine flu. You know, we used to call it swine flu before we started calling it H1N1. It's no coincidence because the meat industry got up in arms about, hey, this is going to make people stop eating pork. Well, if everyone is hysterical about where are the vaccines, why can't I get a vaccine for my kid? Why aren't we asking questions about the root causes? This swine flu that's now an epidemic, it's broken out in 48 of 50 states, they've been able to trace it back to a farm in North Carolina.
Seriously, become a vegan.